Bela Lugosi was my first big childhood obsession. For those who don't know, that's this guy.
I am Dracula.
Lugosi was this revolutionary Hungarian actor who travelled to America in 1920, not knowing a word of English, and made himself a Hollywood star. That's a very quick summary. He deserves a video all to himself. I first saw Dracula when I was probably around 6 years old, and I was mesmerised by this strange, heavily accented man. He was unlike anyone I'd seen before, mannered, theatrical, and entirely distinct, charisma personified. I endeavoured to watch and read everything I could about Lugosi, inevitably leading to my love of horror and of cinema in general. Yeah, I was a weird kid, moved past it. Anyway, in this quest for all things Lugosi, as a child of around 10, I obtained a VHS copy of this film, Scared to Death. Now, anyone who knows anything about Bela Lugosi knows that he was forced into a few unfortunate career moves over the course of his life. Scared to Death can definitely be counted as one of them. 10-year-old me watched the film and I couldn't make heads nor tails of it, so I watched it again just to make sure, like I might have accidentally watched it wrong the first time or something. I'm sure it didn't help that the print quality was probably atrocious and the audio was all fuzzy. The video sat untouched and on the shelf for years after that until someone probably threw it away. Now, watching it 2 decades later in relatively good condition for the 3rd time, I can confirm that Scared to Death makes absolutely no sense and is rubbish. We begin in a morgue, a fitting location for this moribund deadweight mess.
Is this the body?
Oh no, that's a prop from a magic act.
Yes, Doctor. And the police are particularly anxious that the cause of death be determined at the earliest possible moment.
Weird, normally police don't give a about that sort of thing. Oh yeah, just tell us by next week or whatever, I don't care.
She was a very beautiful woman. One hates to perform an autopsy on a beautiful woman.
Love cutting up those ugly though. We cut back in time and the dead lady on the table, Laura, is alive and well again. Hooray! This man, Dr. Van E, is trying to cover her face in bandages. Quite naturally, she freaks out and he acts like she's mental because of it. I too would object if a doctor were trying to suffocate me with facial bandaging for no good reason. And I really can't think of any reason. We find out that the doctor's son, Ward, is married to Laura and wants a divorce.
What's that?
It's a stethoscope. Did you just come out of a cave? Laura is plagued by constant tension in the way that only women pre-1960-ish could be. Textbook female hysteria. Throughout the film, we cut back and forth from the past to the morgue as Laura narrates her own story from beyond the grave, always with this irritating, ethereal sound effect. Was that really necessary? A lady called Mrs. Williams comes to visit the doctor to blackmail him about something. There's also this policeman, Mr. Raymond, knocking about, seemingly with the singular purpose of irritating me. Second cut back to the morgue in 8 minutes.
Then came this sinister pair.
Hey, it's Bela! And a little person. But Bela, hooray! Things are bound to get more exciting now.
Indigo and I should have kicked the door in.
Yes, sir.
I believe I'm in the home of Dr. Joseph Van E.
Yes, sir. I mean, sirs.
Oh, do not be polite to Inigo. He's only offended by it.
Yeah, just treat my mate like shit, it's fine.
Make yourself at home.
We got a nice tree in the yard, but it ain't got no coconuts.
Don't know if that's a real language or just made up. The simple-minded policeman stalks about, sexually harassing the maid, Lilibeth. I'm going to choose to believe he isn't actually a policeman at all, but actually a developmentally delayed man who the doctor humours and allows to roam the premises because he does no real harm.
I have had an appointment with him these 20 years. He will see me.
Doctor, someone's coming!
Oh, just a quick tip push there.
My dear doctor.
Bela plays Leonide, a man visiting the doctor for mysterious and sinister reasons that are never made quite clear. Also, they're cousins, not that it matters.
You may have the room next to my daughter-in-law. I know you'll like that.
Oh, yes. The lady who I'm told has an utmost horror of having her eyes blindfolded.
Who told you that and why? And why are people always trying to blindfold her so that that's common knowledge? Third cut back to the morgue for literally 2 seconds.
That night, my husband questioned Leonard about my past.
Ward shows Leonide a photo of a man and a woman dancing. Then this happens.
Who knows?
They play dramatic music, so we're obviously supposed to be worried, even though we really have nothing to put this shot in context. We can barely discern the mask's location or anything. It feels like it was shot at a separate time and place. It's hardly threatening because it's just too confusing and meaningless. Ward thinks that the woman in the photograph is his wife, Laura, and that if he were able to find the man in the photo, he'd find Laura wasn't his wife after all. If you don't understand what that means, neither do I. It's very unclear what's brought him to this conclusion.
Lorette. I'll make a bet the man in green will get you yet.
Oh, you're a poet and you didn't know it. Fourth unnecessary cutback.
A gruesome surprise was in store for me the following morning.
Laura gets a parcel. She opens it to find... Jesus, a poorly made copy of her own head. She screams and Mr. Raymond bursts in and Laura threatens him with a gun.
Who done it? Which way did he go?
Get out! Get out!
I just heard you.
Now will you get out?
All right. I can take a hint. Nice little bedroom companion you've got there.
Get out!
I'll go, but don't think I'll come running next time you yell. I'll know it's a fake.
I became afraid and my mind started to crack.
We know you're afraid, you don't have to tell us. Fifth cutback. Laura notices her photograph, the one Ward was carrying, is missing and attacks the maid over it. Mr. Raymond shows Dr. Van E. the severed head, and E says it's an anatomical model that he'd been keeping in the basement. I suspect this is probably cover for E actually being some kind of bizarre sex pervert. The maid then notices that Raymond has cobwebs all over his shoes. From the basement? ? This red herring would work better if Raymond wasn't a complete moron and clearly incapable of doing anything ever except being f***ing unbearable as a human being.
Yes, I was scared. Scared of my life.
Oh my god, we get it. In further exposition, Dr. E reveals that Leonide was confined in this house when it was a mental asylum. And somehow, as a patient, he covered the house in secret passages. The doctor clearly wasn't very attentive to what his patients were up to. I may as well not tell you this, as it isn't relevant to anything that happens in the plot, really. Mask.
Body, and I'm in.
Stop looking at me.
Yet more characters show up, a reporter, Terry Lee, and someone called Jane Cornell. Around 90% of films pre-1960 seem to insist on including a wisecracking reporter in some capacity. Lee is, accidentally, probably the creepiest thing about the movie, as he seems imminently liable to beat his female companion to death at any moment.
How romantic. I just love that.
Hush, dear. Listen.
Oh.
I feel like her life is hanging by a thread and she doesn't even know it. Dr. E wakes up from being knocked out.
I want the police right away.
Couldn't I get you high sometime and...
Sweetheart, have you ever heard the old saying about little girls?
What's that?
Little girls should be seen and not heard. Now go on, powder your nose.
Sexism. Scared to Death makes the cardinal error that so many Lugosi films make, in that they don't show Lugosi nearly enough. The only man with any charisma, and he's barely here. We spend so much time with this dummy and his comedy antics, and I don't know why anyone would make the assumption that that's what we want as an audience. Everyone sort of hangs around and spends a lot of time insinuating things about each other. It's very dull. Mask again? It seems to be appearing only for our benefit because nobody in the house ever notices it. Oh, we're about 40 minutes in and some drama as Lilibeth the maid is dead. Mr. Raymond recovers very quickly from this grievous loss, you know, the love of his life, and just moves on. Now, I believe this is the 7th cutback. I'm stopping counting.
Now, are you any wiser than you were a moment ago?
No, Leonide, not at all. There are gunshots from upstairs. Mr. Raymond gets tied up, and Jane gets a mask put on her face. Meanwhile, Leonide steals the body of Lilibeth. Not going to lie, I watched the next part at times 30 speed because it was just the reporter and the policeman sat talking, and I thought I might end myself if I had to listen. Pretty sure I didn't miss anything important. Lilibeth turns up outside like a zombie. She isn't dead, but who could possibly give a shit? Then more
talking. And I would also like to know where you obtained all this information. You're extremely young to have your fingertips on events of 20 years ago.
I have a memory like an elephant. I never forget something once I hear it. I'm a Sharpie, Professor. As every one of you will admit before morning. Now, Doctor, I'd like to bore you with a few questions.
Oh, God. Jane comes in and her fiancé, the reporter, tries desperately to refrain from murdering her. Must have been terrible in the 40s when you were obligated to marry someone you hated. Glad I'm alive now instead. Jane says she saw a green mask come out of the wardrobe, then the lights go out. To be honest, I'd take anything that she says with a pinch of salt because she's the only person possibly stupider than the policeman. She seems to genuinely have something wrong with her.
That thing.
Now look, let's get back to the beginning. I left you here with Dr. Van E.
Yeah, and then he gave Mrs. Van E a shot with a long needle.
Never mind that.
All right. Then he said, would I sit with Mrs. Van E?
Okay, where is she now?
Who?
Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an exciting night, and you all are deserving of some explanation and relaxation for the strange goings-on.
Yes, please. Okay, here's the explanation for everything that's gone before. Turns out Laura sold her first husband out to the Nazis in Paris as he was an Allied spy, and she got paid 1 million francs for it. And the last gift she gave this guy was a green scarf for his eyes before he faced the firing squad, and that's why she doesn't like to have things on her face.
There's blood on it. There's blood.
I have come back. I am here, and I will have my revenge.
No! No, don't touch me! Ah!
Then after we find out this information, she dies for no particular reason. Mr. Raymond finds her first husband in the bushes outside, dressed as Mrs. Williams, and it turns out he used to be Leonide's assistant. Absolutely bizarre, not sure why that's in there.
Nobody will get you.
Oh, but...
Well, Doctor, got anything to add to my story of the year?
Who's this Renee?
Renee was a husband. She turned him over for a sum. Figured the Nazis would take care of him, but he had ideas of his own.
Look, Doc, was it murder? Do I finally get a break? Was she murdered?
We're sending the report to the police.
What was it say?
Ah, come on, Doctor, don't hold out on us.
I didn't understand it at first, but I do now. There were no marks of violence on the body, and we found no internal disturbances.
What does this all add up to, Doctor?
Yes, let's...
Oh my God, I know where this is going.
She was literally scared to death.
What the f***? That was Scared to Death, 100% do not recommend. One of the most boring, confusing pieces of nonsense I've ever sat down to watch 3 times in my life. Childhood me was definitely more patient than adult me because I'm not watching that film even for a second ever again. Cheers for sticking with me. Remember to subscribe and throw me a like. See you again soon.